On today's Locked On Texan podcast, more from Sunday's game, and we look at the linebacker group with Garrett Wallow getting some praise from his head coach, Lovie Smith. Also talked about Nico Collins and why it's important to start looking at him differently, maybe like wide receiver number one. All that in today's and more on today's episode of the Locked On Texans.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Remember, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before because BetOnline is where the game starts, and Tuesdays with Locked On Texans is where your day should start.
Yes, sir.
I'm John Hickman. That's Cody Davis. And Texan fans, I want you guys to be proud of something. I want you guys to just sit back and understand that what happened on Sunday has some ripple effects. May not be anything professional. However, we live in the world of social media. Social media is real to a certain extent. And by God, Cody,
I already know where you're going.
Listeners, that loss on Sunday got the Jacksonville Jaguars contemplating whether or not Trevor Lawrence is QB1 for the future. I think, listen, you know we like to have fun here on the Locked On Texans, and we bring you news, but I think that if we don't do anything else, let's go ahead and clap for that. But, Cody, let's talk about the Houston Texans, of course. The snap count came out from Sunday's matchup and featured, guys getting more playing time. We saw the increase of snaps for guys like Neville Hewitt, who didn't get an opportunity to play in the last game on defense, got some special teams burn. More opportunities for Jalen Reeves-Maybin. He got more opportunities, and, of course, more opportunity for second-year man Garrett Wallow, who had 18 snaps played defensively. Also, before we talk about the linebacker group, some other important information that I think needs to be said. Tyler Johnson, who played on Sunday, he lined up for 22 snaps on Sunday, two on the outside, 0 targets, but he played for Chris Moore, who was inactive on Sunday as well. I think that's very important. We may have an opportunity to maybe see a change in what's going on with the wide receiver group. Not necessarily a big upgrade. I don't think it upgraded at all so far because he hasn't caught a ball for Houston, anything significant. But with Chris Moore out, Tyler Johnson was able to see some more time. And as of right now, MGM, they have Dameon Pierce currently the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think that's very important. Kind of fun. We haven't had a Rookie of the Year in how long here in Houston?
Have we ever?
Wasn't that
I don't
JJ?
think we ever. No, JJ wasn't.
Was it D'Amico?
I gotta look back and see.
Maybe it was D'Amico.
I don't know.
Well, speaking of D'Amico, who's doing a fantastic job as a defensive coordinator for the 49ers, as we do know, D'Amico Ryans, one of the Houston Texans' early top picks in their franchise history, played linebacker, played some good football for the Houston Texans. Lovie Smith talked about the linebackers today. Cody, you were out there with the coaching staff, with the team. What's going on with that?
Yeah, and going into the bye week, of course, first and foremost, everybody, especially Lovie Smith, was in probably the best move that we have seen them since the start of the regular season. And, I said this yesterday, and I'm going to repeat it again. Say what you want about the Houston Texans, but at the end of the day, regardless of how their record is looking as of right now, we got to give them kudos that they have been competitive in every single one of these games. And the only game where you was kind of like, this might be a blowout that might turn a little bit ugly for this organization, they end up coming back and cut the Los Angeles Chargers lead all the way down to 3 and had an opportunity to steal that game. But, John, the first 4 games of the season, we talked a lot about the linebackers, how disappointing their production has been. And on yesterday, Lovie Smith had an opportunity to talk about the improved play of the linebackers, and he said something that you and I have talked about, especially you, John, about the rotation and the fact that they was able to get guys like Garrett Wallow more involved in the rotation. It actually helped the production of the linebackers wide receiving core. Now, before moving on, I had an opportunity to ask Lovie Smith about the production of the linebacking core with more and more people getting healthy. I also asked him, not only talk about the production that you saw out of Garrett Wallow, but what type of impact do he think Christian Harris is going to have? And I know he decided not to answer that question on purpose, but at the end of the day, John, listeners and viewers, when you hear what Lovie Smith had to say about how healthy the linebacker unit has gotten, especially how important Garrett Wallow is to this linebacking core, it lets you know that, just like I said on yesterday's show, whenever all of these linebackers get healthy, whenever everybody really get an opportunity to go out there on the field and showcase what they can do, this linebacking core is going to be a lot promising other than what we saw through the first 4 weeks of the regular season.
First off, to some of your questions that you've noticed, the guys that kind of the Dez King question, of course Garrett Wallow, LT, and some of those physical things that you're having to look into detail to see those things. But Garrett Wallow has been a good football player whenever he's played. Last year he started at the Jacksonville game, and he started the LA Chargers game, two of the ones that we won last year. And he started this game, and we get consistent play from him whenever he plays. So I thought he did an outstanding job yesterday with everything that we asked him to do. Student of the game, another guy that's always here working, and I like some of the youth that we have at that linebacker position.
One of the things that I do like about Garrett Wallow is the fact that he might be arguably, of course, until Christian Harris comes along, but he might be arguably their best linebacker that can actually play in coverage. And on yesterday at the 8:50 mark of the second quarter, Garrett Wallow had a tremendous pass breakup that actually interfered with the offensive momentum that the Jacksonville Jaguars started to get. John, once again, I understand we talked a lot about the linebackers here, but I kind of hate knowing we gave them a lot of crap, to say the least. However, a lot of the guys, especially a lot of the young guys, as Lovie Smith put a hefty emphasis on the young linebackers that they have on this roster, it will get better once everybody gets healthy and has an opportunity to go out there on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when you look at the linebacker group so far for Houston, like if we go immediately to last game against the Chargers, you got Maven Reeves with 2 defensive snaps, right? You have Neville Hewitt, who didn't play at all defensively for the Houston Texans. And then you have Garrett Wallow, who recorded 20 snaps. And all of that looks pretty much better. Now you look at this week and the rotation that they had going on. Okay, now let's take a look at Garrett Wallow. Snaps went down, only played 18 snaps, but he was still out on the field and effective in Sunday's matchup. Mm-hmm. Look at Neville Hewitt. He played in 12 snaps. Reeves Maben, he played in 16 snaps. So the importance of getting an additional, 46 snaps out of 3 different players when Christian Kersey has been playing 100% of the snaps so far this year, regardless of how we feel about Kersey's play, we have to understand that rotations in modern football is very important simply because guys get gas, right? We can acknowledge that. However, you're going to have a player that may not be ready to be the starter at that time. However, they do some things a little bit better than what the starter may be able to do. And I think when you're able to get 3 different linebackers out there, when a week prior you wasn't able to get one out there and the other 2 barely saw the field, one barely saw the field and the other one still working his way back from injury, combining that with that mix, that does allow Lovie Smith, that does allow Miles Smith, both of whom was critical of the linebacker group so far up until Sunday's game. I mean, Lovie Smith mentioned on yesterday at the press conference, he mentioned how this is from Lovie Smith. We haven't been completely pleased with the play at linebacker. They rotated starters Christian Kersey and Kamu Grugier-Hill, partly because of the weather, but Kersey hadn't missed a snap all season, so he hasn't been pleased with what he's been seeing from his linebacker group. Neither has his head coach and position coach and son, Miles Smith. It's very important to get those additional bodies out there because at the very least, you may be able to play them in certain situations that you may be comfortable with a guy doing this, i.e. Gary Wallow making a play, that you're not necessarily comfortable with another player in that same position. One thing that I loved from Lovie Smith, he just mentioned how it had been a long time since the Houston Texans had an opportunity to have some of that I got to win talk in the locker room and on the plane. He said that have to figure out how to have it again. Basically, it had been a while, but it's good to get Lovie Smith his first dub as a head coach and for those players that have been fighting for Lovie Smith each and every step of the way. Listen, fall is chaos in your pants. Watch it. But sometimes you're overheating 1 second and then you're freezing the next. And to be ready for anything, you need underwear that can handle everything. It's time for Tommy John underwear. In Tommy John underwear, you're that much more comfortable. I wish I could show you what I got on my underwear right now, but that may be like too much. But you're able to do everything better, very comfortable. Name a problem with other underwear, and Tommy John solves it. Tommy John's breathable, lightweight fabric has 4 times the stretch of competing brands. They come up with no wedgie guarantee, thanks to a non-rolling waistband and legs that never ride up. Plus, they feature a horizontal quick draw fly. With over 17 million pairs sold, people love Tommy John underwear. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. You hear what I said? They do not have customers. People rave about Tommy John because the product is that damn good. And I love wearing my Tommy John. When they say it's very breathable, it's very breathable. It's not super heavy. I'm able to go and have a light jog and feel perfectly fine afterwards. So go to TommyJohn.com/lockedon right now for 20% off your first order. 20% off at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. That's TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See site for more details. Thanks again for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL Keepers every Friday, Locked On NFL. Locked On local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest stories and games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus your betting advice from the field's leading experts, Bet Online. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans. And during the break, I had an opportunity to do some research. John, you was correct. Nico Collins did win Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2006. That was the last time a rookie for the Houston Texans actually won an award. The first one was, ironically, a running back named Dominique Davis in 2003. By the way, doing my research, I ran across J.J. Watt winning Defensive Player of the Year, not 1, not 2, but 3 times from 2012 to 2015. And I just wanted to just give a moment.
I don't think there's a
just to give that man some flowers.
Yeah, at his peak, I don't think there's a defensive player, a defensive lineman better than J.J. Watt at his peak that I've watched. I know LT is LT, so I'm not mentioning maybe the greatest football player of all time, but especially within the last 20 years, I can't think of a better defensive player at his position, at his peak, during that 3-year run. I mean, I've never seen a DN utilized like a hybrid player.
As a tight end. It had multiple touchdowns as that as well.
Yeah, so JJ is a player that you want to see retire a Texan. Yeah, regardless of what happens in Arizona. And I don't think Arizona's going to get it right anyway. So you might as well come on home.
Yeah, might as well. Hopefully him and the Texans could work something out where he could retire a Texan. But J.J. Watt is unfortunately the past. Now it's time for us to look at the present and maybe the future as well. Yeah. Because Nico Collins, John, listeners and viewers, I understand that this is only the 5th game of the regular season. And no, I'm not just saying this due to the game that took place on Sunday, because on Sunday, Nico Collins had an opportunity to go out there on the field and record a team best 65 yards on 6 targets, caught 4 balls, and of course the biggest one of all that has everybody talking is the 22-yard reception that he
go get
on third
it
and second.
go get it.
What I love most about that play, that was the primary example of what Coach Lovie Smith has been talking about through this entire year. Every time he mentioned Nico Collins, he talks about Collins' 6'4" stature and his ability to use his body and win those 50-50 balls, and that's what we saw on Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 games into the season, Nico Collins is currently leading this team in receiving yards with 272 yards, and as of right now, he has 37 more yards than Brandon Cooks. However, John, listeners and viewers, this is a guy who is leading the team in receiving yards, and he only has 27 targets on the season. Brandon Cooks has a total of 42. John, you have talked about this a lot. I've been holding off about it, but I think it's time for us to really have the conversation. Should Nico Collins be featured as this team's #1 wide receiver moving forward? Now, before you answer, listeners, before you start getting on us in the comments, just take a listen to what Lovie Smith had to say, because not only myself, but also our good friend Aaron Wilson also had an opportunity to ask him a couple questions about Nico Collins. Aaron Wilson asked about what should you guys do more with Nico Collins? Lovie Smith said we want to get him more involved. I backdoored and said, what is something you guys, after reviewing the film, what are something that you guys actually need to do in order to get Collins more involved? And this is what he had to say.
Nico Collins is a big target. He can catch the ball. He can jump. Starting from the LA preseason game, we got a chance to see that, and we tried to get him more and more involved each week. And he's a tough matchup, against defensive backs. So we need to continue to do that.
That you guys would like to see.
I don't know if there's anything else. Can't start giving away the game plan and all that, but I think first just acknowledgement that Nico needs to be more involved. When you had an opportunity to go through 5 games, you kind of see everybody's kind of showing you who they are, and you have to go with it. Some you really like what you're seeing, and maybe others you don't like as much. Some need to get more reps, some need to get less reps. That's how we're looking at it.
Now, I know every time people talk about Nico Collins, there's this big argument stating that Collins would not be a #1, #2 wide receiver if he was on a better team. John, listeners and viewers, I truly do not know about that, because what I have seen, the growth in Nico Collins ever since he first came to this organization last year, but I go back and I take a look at the progression that I saw throughout training camp, the progression that I saw throughout preseason, and here we are once again with only 27 targets in 5 games, yet he's leading the team. And not only that, John, listeners and viewers, these are not empty stats. Every time Nico Collins make a play, it's a play to put the Houston Texans in prime position. And correct me if I'm wrong, but every single time, or almost every single time, there's a drive where the Houston Texans actually score or actually in position to kick a field goal, it's Nico Collins stepping up. Once again, Brandon Cooks is my guy. I've been rocking with Brandon Cooks ever since he got in the league as a member of the New Orleans Saints. However, in the second half of this season following the bye week, I truly do believe that the Houston Texans need to do whatever they can to let Davis Mills know, moving forward, Nico Collins should be your #1 receiver.
And let's look at it, the pattern for Lovie Smith so far. When we look at some of the struggles that Lovie Smith has addressed, I think the #1 is when you look at the game against the Colts. Well, that game, we didn't get a lot of in the first game to open up the year. We didn't get a lot of Dameon Pierce like we expected. We got a lot more of Rex Burkhead, which nobody really expected, right? In that game alone, Dameon Pierce had 11 carries, Rex Burkhead had 14. And then that was a question that was asked to Lovie Smith. What did he say? We got to get Dameon Pierce more carries. We got to get him involved. So I use that to translate it over what he just mentioned about Nico Collins, right? We got to get him involved. Nico Collins is a player that is averaging 18 yards per catch right now. And so whether or not he'll be a number 1 or number 2 on somebody else's team, this is the Locked On Texans. We cover the Houston Texans, and so that's what we're talking about. And as of right now, 18 yards per catch compared to a Brandon Cooks, whom we all love here in Houston. I think Brandon Cooks is averaging around 9 yards per catch. Well, yeah. Logically, the numbers say if you go to this player, then he's going to have an opportunity to make a big play almost every time he catches the ball, right? You look at the big 50-yard game that he had against the Chargers. He had 80-something yards in that game on 3 catches. Nico is the better option right now. That's not saying Brandon Cooks is washed. That's not saying Brandon Cooks' days are behind him. What that's saying is it's time to make an adjustment, right? And I think that's the importance of this bye week, right? You're going to get guys healthy. Guys are going to be able to come back and start practicing more and getting around this team, and this team will get healthier and healthier. However, there's going to be opportunities that the coaching staff need to sit down and look and say, we got to make adjustments here. We got to make an adjustment there. And I think the biggest adjustment offensively is making sure Nico Collins is getting those targets, because numbers prove if he touches the ball, he's getting a big play each and every time.
And by the way, these target numbers does not look good. Brandon Cooks leading the team with 42. Nico Collins at 27. Rex Burkhead is number 3 at 24. I want to see Davis Mills. I want to see the Houston Texans utilize Nico Collins as their number 1 wide receiver. Of course, you have to keep Brandon Cooks in the midst, but if you need a number 3 target, please utilize Chris Moore. Utilize Tyler Johnson. Like, the Houston Texans, John, you mentioned this a lot. They don't have the best collection of talents, the best collection of playmakers on their team. However, even in this conversation of us talking about the Texans utilizing Nico Collins as their number 1 wide receiver, we could say this all day, but a majority of it goes back to Davis Mills. He has to get in. He has to be a quarterback who is going to step out of his comfort zone and actually spread the ball around more. Because look, once again, love Brandon Cooks. Always been one of my favorite players, but there is no reason in hell he should be leading the team in targets with 42.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And when we look at what the Texans can do offensively different, I think that with Chris Moore out, who we cannot downplay Chris Moore. He is on the team. He spent time with this team last year. So he is one of the more familiar targets for Davis Mills and Pep Hamilton on this offense. But he's never been a guy to where, we look at last year and look at this year and say, man, he's lost a step. He's always been in that role that he served in. So he hasn't lost a step. And again, Houston did not invest in that position. So how can you make up for some of those targets? How can you make up for some of that production? It's imperative, super important, that they continuously get their tight ends involved. Jordan Akins has been great for Houston offensively since signing here in Houston. You know what that means. O.J. Howard has 2 touchdowns on the year, but he's a guy that he has to get involved more, right? Brevin Jordan, whenever he comes back, if he has room left here, which he should, this team isn't overly talented to just kind of kick him to the curb. Utilize him as well, right? Everybody with this offense is all hands on deck. It's not like you had Brady and Moss, and Moss looks at Brady, Brady looks at Moss, and they know what to do, right? Everybody has to touch the ball. And I think that was one of the more disappointing points from Sunday's game. When you look at the first half, only 4 people caught passes. To end the game, only 5 people caught passes. Now, that was able to work against the Jacksonville Jaguar team that, honestly, defensively may have not been as good, and you were able to go out there and string together win. We are happy for you. But this bye week is a perfect time for the entire coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball. Watch some film and figure out what guys can do to make this offense continuously move. Because when Dameon Pierce is running that ball as hard as he is, breaking 17 tackles in the game, When Nico Collins is your only outside the number threat, you're going to be able to find some guys across the middle. Davis Mills got to get on the same page with Pep Hamilton, hit some of these wide open guys, but ultimately, overall, more guys has to touch the ball. As I mentioned earlier, Dameon Pierce right now is currently the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. You can find that bet and much more at BetOnline as they continue to be your number one source for football betting information this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're talking about free. We're talking about available. It's not necessarily free, but you can get a discount. Shout out to Cal McNair. First, it was the hot dogs and hamburgers, and then he hopped on Reddit. Cody, what he got now?
Well, somebody on Reddit asked Cal, can he hold a jersey swap celebration? Because he knows it, we knows it. A lot of people know that a lot of Texans fans have one particular jersey that they just don't want to own anymore. And Kyle said, you know what? Because of the last era and how it ended, we have a lot of promising players on this team as of right now. Cal McNair made it a point to have an opportunity to allow fans to go to the team shop and exchange their old jersey, i.e. one particular jersey, for one of the new players that we got on the team, i.e. Dameon Pierce. And it's not going to be free. You're still going to have to pay. But you're going to get not 10, not 30, not even 40, but 44% off your new jersey when you switch it. Now, there are some rules and regulations. Early on in the show, we talked about D'Amico Ryans. We talked about J.J. Watt. Pretty sure when you guys hear great, you think of DeAndre Hopkins. You think of Andre Johnson. Those player jerseys are not going to be part of this exchange. But starting, ironically, with the draft class of 2017... From 2017 all the way up to, I think, I don't have the paper in front of me, but from 2017 all the way up until, I think, 2020, players who are no longer...
2021 signings as well.
So 2021 signing as well. Okay. Signings. There are players like Tyrod Taylor, Lonnie Johnson Jr., David Johnson. You know, all of these guys are, if you have their jerseys, you could go right there to the NRG team shop. Switch it out, pay 44% off for your new jersey. But John, we all know what this is.
I love it.
I love it. And by the way, did you see the picture that the social media used? The advertisement?
With the 4 and then the 4 on top of it?
Yeah, and then out of 99 jerseys that they could have picked, they used the number 4 jersey.
Why not? Hey, you know what?
Man.
Let me tell you why I like this for Cal. I've liked it because this is the most professional way that Cal McNair is kind of able to fight back publicly. Right? He's an owner of an NFL franchise. He's a billionaire. He's all of these things, and he can't fight back maybe so much with words or reactions like he probably would want to, but he's killing two birds with one stone. First of all, he's fighting back publicly, like I just mentioned, but he's also still rebuilding that fan base love and trust. Some people are going to find any reason to be mad. Those are those people. But when you look at what Cal is doing right now and what he has been doing over the last few months, what can you really be mad about? And so I think this was dope. I know there may be a lot of people because you know black folks' last name. We got a lot of Johnsons. 2019, we had a Johnson that was drafted. And so in the black household, like if this had Hickman, I would that would be me. I'm always wearing this. So we had a lot of Johnsons in Houston. It was, a lot of black folks out here, and so I'm pretty sure that was it number 1 or 32
yeah,
or
number 1. It was number 1 and 32. It was 32 his rookie season. Then he switched it.
We threw it. They go return. Tweet through it. They go return. Maybe Max Sharpen, 2019. I don't know, but I do like this. And so for people who are just this is just whatever because I've seen it. Understand this: one franchise is helping out their fans by allowing them to return jerseys for 44% off.
No, not jerseys, jersey, because we know what this is.
And it's gonna be a lot of them, right? And, I wonder because Houston plays the Browns this year.
Oh man, every time
if like they had the jerseys just hanging on the side rails whenever the Browns come out, and it's just like 4. That may be the amount of towels that he has, but I like that for that reason. But you got one franchise owners doing this, and you got one franchise that's questioning whether or not their franchise number one pick at quarterback is the future of their franchise. So Texas fans, it's not a lot of dubs you can take. It's been a lot of L's, but when you can take a dub and enjoy it. I'm John Hickman. Thank you guys for checking us out today. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Also, like us on Facebook, subscribe, comment, and share on YouTube as well.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS _24. Tomorrow, we get an opportunity to hear from Nick Caserio. So, of course, John and myself, we're going to break that down and try to pick the brain of our general manager to see what is he thinking after the first quarter of the 2022 campaign.
Let me guess. You just got to get guys out there that's going to do their job. We like the guys that we have on a roster. Yeah, DP did some great things. And when you look at Mills is Mills. And so I'm not going to comment on that because I never do and I never will.
Bingo. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.